Hey gang, I am Joe Edelman and welcome to the Last Frame Live. Tonight, we need to have a chat about post-processing and social media. And of course, I've got a great DIY hack for you and the exclusive Last Frame Photography Q&A. So start typing. I'll do my best to answer all of your questions in the next 60 minutes. And look, if you're watching live, you know the drill. If you've been here before, please leave me a note in the chat. Let me know who you are and where you are watching from. And look, if you're watching the replay, no worries. Drop a comment below the video so that I know you were here. Already, let's see, I got Jay here from Colorado, Eric's here from San Antonio, Texas, Joe out in Vista, California, Calvin up in Maine, I got David in San Diego, Jeremy's here from VAB. What is VAB, Jeremy? I don't know that one. Lynn sneaking in here from New York. Thank you, all of you. You're part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame every week. And for that, I will work really hard tonight to help you with your photography. And it would help a lot more people find out about The Last Frame if you could do me a solid, hit that thumbs up down below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube recommends the show to other photographers. And of course, while you're down there, feel free to go ahead and share out that link. Hit the share button or share the link lastframe.live. Let your photography friends know that we're streaming live right now on Facebook. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out. Okay? All right, so let's dive right into this, okay? Recently on social media, I shared a photography quote that was actually from an article that I wrote back in 2021. And by the way, just a little side note, if you're not following me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, you're missing out every single day, Monday through Friday, so 5 days a week. I post a photography quote from generally a very well-known or accomplished photographer. Over the course of a year, there are maybe 5 quotes of mine that I sneak in there because they're part of my educational mission. But these are photographers that are worth knowing about. Along with every quote that looks like what you see over on the screen here, there is a link in the post so that you can go to that photographer's website if they are still alive, or if they are a photographer who has already passed, you can go and visit a website that has their body of work, a little bit of their biography and history. So just so you know, if you didn't, now you do, right? So the quote, as you see, SOOC is not a badge of honor. It is code for too lazy to process images. Well, let me just tell you, it is fair to say that I kicked a hornet's nest of repressed feelings with that quote, as the comments that showed up on Facebook and LinkedIn especially ranged from name calling to denial to, honestly, the equivalent of protests of fake news. I mean, look, some of them were polite in their discourse, and others, they were just plain a-holes. So look, you know, I don't really care about the a-holes. I wouldn't be teaching online if I did. And I have to say, I've also learned that one of the quickest ways to get somebody's back up against the wall and put them in a defensive mode is to use the word lazy. So is that what I intended to do by sharing this quote? Well, yeah, kind of, right? And look, we all know, and this is not why I shared it, but even if I do get a negative response to that sentiment, I'm getting people to think about it and consider their own work. And let's remember that on social media, even the nasty comments feed the algorithms. But I promise you, this was not a clickbait quote. It's actually something that I feel really, really passionate about. So I wanted to share this with you tonight, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit because honestly, where the real surprise for me was, I was both surprised and disappointed by the variety of defenses that were offered by those people that disagreed with or took offense to the quote. So let's start out. For those of you that don't know, what is SOOC? So look, if you don't know what that means, good for you. I mean, seriously, good for you. SOOC is an acronym for straight out of camera. It is often used as a bragging statement. In fact, I would suggest that it's most often used as a bragging statement, meaning that the image is so good that it requires no post processing. Now, remember, I didn't say all the time, I said often. Okay. It's frequently seen in Facebook photography groups, Flickr communities, Instagram posts, and unfortunately, these posts are usually accompanied by photos that lack essential foundational aspects of a good photograph. Now, before we go any further in the conversation, I want to clarify a few points because the only way this conversation benefits you at all, or anyone for that matter, is if we're all on the same page. Because if you go look at the comments, the a-hole ones, they've been deleted, so you're not going to be able to enjoy them. But if you go look at the comment threads under those quotes, you'll notice that frequently what's happening is people are talking past each other and debating past each other, which doesn't really help either, right? So I want to be clear that as we talk about this concept behind this quote, I am not judging these images. When I talked about, less than ideal images, I'm not judging these images based on an image's, or I should say, a photographer's creative choices. Or for that matter, I'm not judging it based on my taste or my style as a photographer. None of this conversation is about me. I'm also not trying to tell anyone, nobody, what their photographs should look like. And look, if by chance you are not interested in making your photography better, well, then obviously I'm not speaking to you. So mind your business and move on, because there's definitely no need for you to comment in this conversation. But I am making that statement based on things like, to give you some examples, poorly exposed images where the shadows are blocked up and there's no detail in them, or the highlights are completely blown out to the point that they steal all the attention. I am basing this on photos with muddy or flat colors in what we can see are otherwise vibrant scenes, or out of focus or blurry, soft focus images that were definitely not intended to be creative. They're simply not sharp. So in other words, I'm making this statement based on photography basics, the foundational, fundamental elements of nearly every great photograph. So to further point out that this is not about my opinion, it is important to understand, follow along close here, because this is part of what gets left out of this conversation. It's important to understand that every digital camera on the market today, 2023, where are we at? July 5th, is designed with the intent that its images will be developed just like film cameras. And by the way, that statement applies to smartphones just the same. Now look, I know we can shoot a JPEG that can be shared within moments of creation with no processing involved, at least no processing that we have to do. Obviously, there is, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but just so you know, there's a lot of software processing that's happening to create that JPEG. Look, I mentioned smartphones a moment ago, which have software that does an impressive job of processing the images that it touches. The software that creates JPEGs in most of our cameras does a really, really great job of creating a reasonably, I hate to use the word accurate, but that's what the camera manufacturers would use as a word. Okay, JPEG. So to continue this conversation further, let's clarify that I'm speaking about making images. Here's the caveat to all of this now, right? I'm speaking about making images with the goal of getting the most quality that your camera gear is capable of delivering. Now, since I make my money with photography, that means, in other words, getting your money's worth out of the extremely expensive gear. You know, that gear that some of you keep upgrading because it's the latest and the greatest. Not because you need it, but because this camera manufacturer has convinced you it will make your photographs better. Now, let me clarify another very vital point to this conversation. There are always, and you'll see if you follow that thread, but we're going to talk about a few of them. There are always use case exceptions, right? There's very few things in our industry that are 100% all the time. Physics, honestly, is about it. If it involves physics, then you can't debate the physics. But even physics, if you really do your learning, you can use it to manipulate a lot of really cool stuff. And you can be very creative with physics. So, you know, there are always going to be use case exceptions in these kind of conversations. So let me give you a great example. An event photographer who needs to deliver finished JPEGs minutes after taking the photos, right? So in this case, it would not make sense to shoot RAW as a primary file format. You know, maybe as a backup, but those quick delivery JPEGs, they're going to have a minimal amount, if any, processing simply due to the short turnaround time. And at the end of the day, that's a job well done for that photographer. That is an exception to this conversation. So look, so for those of you that fall into a category like that, I understand that exception. But this is not how you maximize quality. And let's face it, if you're that photographer who's shooting that event and doing those quick turnaround images, you're not likely going to be adding any of those images, those quick delivery images, to your portfolio, unless you operate a business that focuses exclusively on that niche. Right? So I'm just trying to keep this real, okay? You know, we can always find exceptions and a way to twist the concept. So I'm talking about the idea of let's get the most out of your cameras. Let's get the best possible quality out of your camera. And that's the starting point for this conversation, right? But there's one more thing I've got to throw into the mix, and this is another really important one. Please understand that the camera that you are shooting with, I don't care what brand, Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, Olympus, Panasonic, even Leicas, and God forbid, even Pentax cameras, they are intended to shoot raw files for maximum quality. That's a fact. And those raw files, for every one of those brands that I mentioned, and if I forgot any that I forgot, those raw files are designed to be developed, just like film. Now here's the cool part. Unlike film, we no longer have to wait a week for pictures to come back to find out just how much we sucked that day. Trust me, I love that fact. We get instant feedback in camera. So by the time we are processing our images, we should only be dealing with properly exposed files, which, keeping it real, gang, but I know that's something that a lot of you still struggle with. But that's a different conversation, and we'll get to that another day. Also, unlike film, today's digital cameras can record a much greater range of tones from light to dark, which gives us way more creative potential, and it allows us to create images that do a much better job of representing what our eyes see and our brains experience. Much better than film can or could back in the day, right? But this doesn't auto-magically happen. It's not an auto thing. It's not just built in where you press the button and poof, it's there. It requires help from software and a human. Now, here's where some people are going to throw in another one of those, but what about, I know what you're going to say, AI. Look, even as AI continues to improve, and if you've been following me, you know I'm all about AI. I think that the stuff that's coming down the pike with AI is amazing, and it is just going to open up so much creative potential for us. But understand that as this AI continues to improve, the best photographers will likely still embrace some elements of AI. But at the same time, they will still be hands-on with their images to ensure quality and creative control. In other words, AI is not 100% there. And the good part of it is most of the companies making AI software, especially these ones that do the AI editing for you, they're not telling you that it's perfect. They're telling you they're going to save you a lot of time because they're going to use the way that you like to process. They're going to get you into the ballpark. And all you got to do is go through and really check for images that kind of miss the mark with that AI that they've created for you, which can be incredible if you shoot in categories where that makes sense. Now, look, also to be fair, because I'm not trying to bully anybody here. I'm really not, which I think is what a lot of people assume from that quote. Look, you guys know that I'm no BS. I don't pull any punches. I tell it the way I see it. And sometimes, being a little bit abrupt, love me or hate me, but that's the best way to get somebody's attention and really make them think. And if I can accomplish that, then you know what? I've been successful. I don't need you to agree with me. I just need you to make sure that you're making good, conscious decisions to improve your photography. So I totally understand that some of you feel that the act of processing your images is not fun. And it's time consuming. You hate sitting in front of a computer screen, makes your back hurt after all. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm not making fun of you. It doesn't matter. Let's face it, in all likelihood, processing images is not what made you fall in love with photography. I totally understand that. Makes complete sense. Would you believe that even in the 1970s, when I learned how to develop film and make my own prints, some photographers back then that I knew, which means there were probably many, many more, but they often talked about how much they hated developing film and printing, and they found it way too time consuming, and they didn't like the smell of the chemicals, and they didn't like the fact that they had to trim their fingernails every other day because the chemicals made their fingernails grow like weeds. They didn't like it. And that's not what they enjoyed most about photography. So what did those photographers do when there was no digital? They sent their film to an outside lab to have it developed. People that were shooting black and white or color negative films like Tri-X in black and white or Kodacolor, they could even have that film back developed the same day if they lived in a larger town or a city. But they had their photos developed. And look, even in the 1970s, you could go to a drugstore and you could get prints made. This happened late 70s, early 80s. This became a thing. A lot of you probably remember the 1-hour Photoshops, right? So you could go to a drugstore and you could get prints made, but every professional photographer knew that those drugstore prints wouldn't be nearly as good as they could do them themselves if they had a darkroom and had the skills, or have done for them at a professional lab, which would cost a little bit more money, but the quality would be there. So, if you're a photographer who doesn't want to invest the time, but you still care about image quality and you want to be able to improve your photography and get the best possible quality out of your camera and your digital files, The good news is you have many modern and more efficient options available. Option 1, of course, outsource. Work with a retoucher or a processing house. Now, of course, there is a cost associated with this, just like sending your film out to a lab, right? But especially if you're making money with your photography, then you're going to build that into your pricing, right? That cost is going to get built into your pricing. Now, if for some reason you're thinking, well, I don't have enough markup in my prices to cover the cost of the outsourced processing, and then I won't make any money. Well, what does that mean? That means that your prices are simply too low, and you need to really work on your pricing structure, which is a conversation we can gladly have sometime on this show if you'd like. Option 2, this is one of those topics that sets people off, and you might be surprised on my take on this, but option 2 is using presets, or as some folks call them, extensions. We have modern software, Luminar Neo. It's built with the idea that you can use extensions and presets as the primary step in your post-processing. Or, for that matter, I think one of the best uses for that setup that Luminar Neo uses is to use it as kind of a creative idea generator to find different ways to process your photos. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that method, even though a lot of people, especially on the internet, they'll trash it just as aggressively as they trashed my quote. In fact, honestly, maybe a little bit more aggressively than they trashed my quote, right? But here's the thing. This is what really gets to the bottom of their conversation. For the few that may be a little bit aggressive but actually mean to help, you need to be aware that if you just click the preset and accept the results as is, sometimes it'll look great. Sometimes it'll look bad. But regardless, when you click, the preset is trying to make your photo look like somebody else's, primarily the person who created the preset. The problem is, if your shooting style is not the same as theirs, it's never going to work well. So I strongly recommend, if you choose the preset route, number one, obviously, don't let anybody bully you out of it. But I strongly recommend that you only use the preset as a starting point, and then fine-tune the presets so that you're giving your photos kind of a unique flavor that becomes your style, right? Also, while we're on option 2, let's do option 2.5. And I kind of touched this already. I got ahead of myself, but it's in my notes here, so let's just mention it again. AI tools, right? AI tools at this point are probably most usable. And there may be some other photographers out there using them. I don't doubt this at all, because, there's a lot of great entrepreneurial minds in our industry. But wedding, portrait, event photographers, those are the 3 categories that are kind of getting the biggest bang for their buck at this moment with the AI tools, right? And of course, just like anything else that's brand new, some are better than others, but almost everyone that does use them, and anytime I get an opportunity to talk to a wedding photographer or event photographer that's using these tools, I ask lots of questions, and I get one consistent response with all of them. They still make small tweaks to the most important images from the shoot, and if there are portfolio quality images in the shoot, they are likely to do a full processing on that image from scratch to get their portfolio quality file, or at least use what the AI did as a start and then really dig in and really tweak it. And that makes complete sense. Might that change down the road? I'm sure it will to some degree, right? But at the end of the day, and this, I'm not saying this should be you, I'm saying for me, this developing stuff that we're talking about, this processing, is an extremely important part of the creative process. If you follow me, you know I fell in love with photography because of the access it gave me to people, but equally as much, I love the creative process. And yeah, there have been plenty of times in my career, both in the darkroom and in front of a computer, where the post-processing can feel like a chore. There's a lot of ways to work through that, a lot of psychological things, but at the end of the day, I remind myself that anytime it's feeling like a chore, that means I'm busy and I should be making money at that point. And that's a good problem to have. So option 3, last one on my list, and we'll wrap this up and we'll move on. Learn Adobe ACR, which of course is in Lightroom and Photoshop, or I mentioned Luminar Neo. It could be Affinity Photo, DxO Photo Lab, or for that matter, even freeware like GIMP, which I believe Google still owns GIMP. I'm not sure, but GIMP is still out there. Taking the time to learn that basic software, right? So even with Photoshop, I'm not saying that you've got to learn how to do all kind of compositing and all that crazy stuff. No. I'm saying the processing, the developing part. You all know I do lots of compositing where I'm adding things into images or putting textures over top. That's not post-processing. That's a whole digital creative process, right? Post-processing is the developing. That's what happens in the develop panel in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw if I'm working in Photoshop, or in the develop panel in Luminar Neo, et cetera, okay? Taking the time to learn the software that will develop your raw files, it builds a set of skills that I promise you, it will expand your creative potential. And honestly, it will allow you to squeeze every bit of quality out of your cameras that you possibly can. So back to my quote. Straight out of camera is not a badge of honor. It's a code for too lazy to process images. The quote is really aimed at a stereotype. As I mentioned early on, generally that quote is heard or found in Facebook community or Facebook groups, Flickr communities, on Instagram, from people bragging about images that have the potential to be really, really awesome images. But they fall horribly short because they weren't well processed. So how does that happen? Are these people just completely clueless? No, they're not. I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, and I'm not bullying anyone. All of you have made this mistake to some degree. I've made it many times. I still make it. I'll probably make it within the next month. We all do. Understand that when you take a photograph, when you pick up that camera and aim it at something and go click, whether it's something that you saw and you just grabbed the shot, or it's something that you put a lot of effort and planning and preparation into and set up things and made it all come together, when you've done that, you have an emotional attachment to that image that no other human being does. The person that might have been in front of the camera doesn't have the same kind of attachment. A photography friend who was standing literally shoulder to shoulder next to you doesn't have the same kind of attachment. Their experience was still different than yours. Part of the challenge as a photographer of getting people to look at your work and appreciate your work, as I said earlier, if that even matters to you. And look, most of us, we're human, and it does matter to some degree. Come on, just keeping it real. In order to accomplish that, these basics, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about foundational basics. Starting in the camera, proper exposures. Can't stress that enough. And that's because most of us are creating exposure the wrong way today. Literally. And I'll gladly take that up in another show. I do a whole presentation about that, actually. What is correct exposure? Okay? The way photography is being taught in so many arenas, it's outdated. It's very outdated. The gear that we're using is actually not designed to work like cameras in the 1970s and 80s. It's not. And even though it has a lot of the same words and settings and dials, it's not, doesn't mean it's the right way to use it like we used to do it. And your manuals in most cases actually explain that to you if you read them. Not in every case, but in some. And it depends on the feature that we're talking about. I'll gladly do a show and dig into that, okay? But the fact of the matter is, right, knowing how your cameras work, knowing how to get good exposure, paying attention to composition, all those things, those are the in-camera foundational pieces. And then, once you download those images into a computer, having a good, consistent, such an important word, consistent workflow. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, well, okay, do you do, shadows and highlights first, or do you go right to the exposure, or do you do the contrast first? Maybe you're a person that likes to do the saturation or the vibrance first. Maybe you do the details first. Maybe you click the button that sets the lens profile, right? Maybe you do that. It doesn't actually matter where you start as long as you have a consistent workflow so that you don't miss steps, so that every single image that you do goes through the same checklist, the same set of evaluations to make sure that you are getting the absolute best rendition of that image that you can. Now, I just noticed, and I'll go back and I'll respond to specific comments. Eric made a comment about, getting it close in the camera. I actually have an article. It's linked below the video. A conversation about, getting it right in camera versus fix it in post. That's another one that's equally as divisive about this SOOC conversation. And it's something that we need to stop that conversation, right? Because it's not either or. It is no longer either or. Getting it right in camera or fixing it post shouldn't be a debate. Plain and simple. Always try to get your image as close to the finished product as possible in camera. But you have to understand, with digital cameras have given us a gift that we did not have with film. Digital cameras have given us the gift of being able to create way beyond the camera, way beyond. And that is amazing. And that doesn't mean you have to do it, but it means you can do it. So the stuff that is going to be the fix it in post stuff, it's not really a fix. It's more like an add it or a create it or a change it. But even with fix, there are times where I will make a very conscious decision to fix it in post. And I talk about it in that article. And I'll give you a quick example. If I'm photographing a model, and as I'm looking through the lens and I'm shooting, I notice there's a stray hair coming down the side of her face. So the first thing I'm going to look to see is, does that stray hair cut through the eye and through eyelashes? If it does, everything comes to a grinding halt. That hair has to be fixed and moved on the spot, and then I'll go back to shooting. If you've ever tried to retouch a hair out of eyelashes, it's a nightmare. You do not want to do that. If that hair is just coming down and it's landing on the cheek right here, if I'm really close to getting my shot exactly the way that I want it and the model's doing the things that I want and everything looks amazing, I am not stopping. I am making a conscious decision that I will fix that hair in post because it will take me less than 10 seconds to remove that hair on the cheek. Less than 10 seconds. But if I stop to fix it, I lose my momentum of a shot that I am so close to getting. So it's a conscious decision made in real time, but it's not a conscious decision that's made to be lazy. And it's not granting yourself permission to just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and not pay attention to details and then spending hours and hours and hours and hours and hours afterwards trying to fix the details that didn't look that good. Every now and then you'll get lucky and it'll work out fine. You're going to waste a lot of time, but the image will work out fine. But equally as every now and then, it's going to bite you in the butt, and you're going to wind up with a less than great image. In other words, it's going to have a sloppy element or elements to it because of you not paying attention to detail. Okay? All right, so that's the SOO thing, gang. It's actually a much simpler statement and much less divisive. And it really comes back to, it's really not about your opinion. It's too, code for lazy, that's opinion. That's my opinion. That's me. Yes, pushing buttons to try and get people to pay attention. But the fact is, your cameras are designed to shoot files that are intended to be processed. That's a fact. It's not open for debate. There are ways you can take shortcuts. What are shortcuts generally associated with? Shortcuts are generally associated with laziness. Oh, how about that? Unless there's a specific business need or benefit by taking that shortcut, right? But generally, in that situation, one would not brag about the quality of their work after taking a lazy shortcut. So if nothing else, post the pictures. Just don't brag that it's SOOC. Who cares? Like, honestly, why should anybody care? Why should another photographer care, for that matter? A few people posted, well, sometimes I like it when we can see the before and after. Okay, seeing the before and after is a lot different than somebody posting a picture and saying SOOC, right? Because it's before and after. So, of course, one of them's SOOC. There's no bragging then. The bragging is actually, look what I was able to do in post. That's the bragging, okay? But that brings me to one other point. And I'll do this one quick, and then we'll get into DIY because I know I'm not going to win this one. But I figured I would share it. The photo quotes that I post. So this one's about me. The photo quotes that I post, I share them for the purpose of education. And what I mean by that is this. My hope is, because obviously I have curated the list of quotes. So all the quotes from all the different photographers are quotes that mean something to me, or quotes that I feel, since I'm the teacher in this case, that I feel should mean things to other people, or that I feel are good lessons for other people, or that I feel are great things for people to consider as they evaluate their own work, kind of like this SOOC quote, right? If you've never noticed it, please go back and look. You'll notice that every post has a little write-up about who that photographer is, because oftentimes, come on, be honest, oftentimes some of these photographers who are quoted, you've never heard of them. So it tells you a little bit about who that photographer is, and there's also a link to a website where you can see that photographer's work or learn even more about them. My honest hope is that all of you will look at these websites, learn about these photographers, and here's the reason why. It's actually not so much for the purpose of improving your photography, believe it or not. That's not why I do it. We could suggest there's a lot of benefits there too, but that requires a little more effort. No, most importantly, what I am hoping that you'll click through and take a look at their work, but read their bios, is to learn over time that much of what you experience as a photographer is not new or is not unique. It's the first time you've experienced it, but it's been dealt with before. I personally, and I can't tell you how to feel, I personally find that very comforting. Knowing that allows me to feel like I'm not stupid, I'm not bad, I don't suck, I'm not an idiot. It allows me to realize, okay, I'm at a point where I'm struggling with something, but other people have struggled with it. So let's find some resource information, or let's find a mentor, or let's set aside some time and clear my head and work through this, because it can be worked through. Because look where these photographers got to. That's the intended value behind these. But I will tell you, I have a small pet peeve. And I know most of you that are watching now or listening or even catching this on replay are not the problem here. So I'm just going to mention it because I think it's something for us all to consider. I totally expect when one of my quotes goes up, like I said, there's like 5 of my quotes for the whole year that show up. I totally expect when one of my quotes goes up, people are going to take me to task for it. That's fine. But when an Ansel Adam quote goes up and somebody immediately comments, oh, that's bull crap. It's like, really? It's Ansel Adams, right? You could tell me that doesn't work for you. You could tell me you don't like that method, whatever. But don't sit there and trash the statement, because understand it's a quote from that extremely successful photographer, which means that whatever they're talking about is about their experience, right? So when we see stuff like this on social media, and not just on my site, on anybody's site, on anybody's pictures, we don't need to comment anything beyond, hey, great job, ever. And if you do feel so moved that you need to comment on something that somebody said, put some effort into it, real effort. I took one person to task when this quote first went up, is they really pushed a couple buttons for me. And I responded, made sure I gave them time to see it, and then I messaged them. Because, again, you guys know, I don't take any crap. I don't have the patience for it. But at the same time, I understand that this person thought they were very right in what they were saying. And just a quick look at their Facebook page made it really clear they had no idea. So I made it a point to reach out to them and actually offer them a consultation. Number one, to prove that I'm not a jerk. I'm not being a jerk. My comment was very straightforward, very to the point, because I wanted their attention. I wanted them to think about it. Because here's what I saw when I looked at their Facebook page. I saw that they were passionate about photography. I saw that they were putting a lot of effort into it. And I saw that they were completely caught up in all the internet bullcrap. And it was not helping them. So that's why. So anyway, for those of you that appreciate what I do, all I'll say is I always appreciate the, hey, that's cool, hey, I like that, because again, it's an algorithm thing, right? The websites love that stuff. But if you take exception to it, by all means, take exception to it, but put in the effort. Otherwise, you'll find I just delete the comments. This is only because this was my quote that I leave all these comments run. When somebody is an idiot on an Ansel Adams quote or an Annie Leibovitz quote or anybody like that, I just delete them, because obviously I don't have the bandwidth to debate everybody that comes up and to try and save everybody that needs saving. Okay? All right, so let's get into one of the things that I know you all want. It's DIY time, okay? So you may be a little bit underwhelmed, but I promise you this one is a winner. It's a big winner, and I'm going to expand on this a little bit. And I'm going to make a little bit of a contest for you, and you've got a week to come up with the solution, okay? So my tip for this week, my DIY hack, has to do with good old-fashioned Reynolds wrap, aluminum foil, or if you're British, aluminium, okay? Now, the reality of it is when we're talking about DIY, there are tons of things that we can use aluminum foil for. And I'm going to mention several, right? But the one that I want to share with you tonight is a little bit of a follow-up to last week, because I realized after I did last week's show that I left aluminum foil out. The reason I left it out, I don't keep it in that little kit, which I do now. I actually have a piece in the kit, but I never bothered putting in the kit because I always had it in my studio, right? So if you've listened to me teach, if you've gone through my videos, all this kind of stuff, number one, you know that I can't stand messy hair. I don't like flyaway hairs. If you see messy hair in one of my pictures, you can bank money. It took about 20 minutes to get the hair that kind of really cool looking messy, right? I showed you last week the idea of using Aquanet and a rat tail comb to take out frizz and to be able to control it. In a pinch, aluminum foil works better, right? Depends on the circumstances. How do you use it? Fold up small sheet of aluminum foil and simply just rub it on the hair. Obviously, I don't have enough hair for it to make a difference. It takes the static right out of the hair. Lays it flat. It's awesome. Now, I will tell you one thing about this. So this is why you have to be careful where you use it and understand the options. Especially when it's humid out. Like right here, now in the northeast part of the United States, it's pretty humid every day. We've been hitting 90 degrees. If your subject's hair has a lot of body or shape to it, not only will it take the frizz out, but it's actually going to practically straighten the hair. It's going to drop most of the body out. For that reason, it's not ideal in humid situations. In humid situations, stick with the Aquanet that I showed you last week. Use the rat tail combs. That's your best bet. But if you're working with a person with straight hair, or even if they have hair with a lot of body, but you're working around the face, using this is going to straighten that hair right out and lay it down. It takes all the static out of the hair, lays it right down, works amazingly well. So the point behind this, so that's the piece right there, right? But the point behind this is it's really a great idea in your studio space or even in your kit, carry a roll of aluminum foil, right? Because you get these for, $5-6, okay? You can use these for all kinds of things. And let's talk for a second about DIY gear in general. Like, when do you DIY and when do you buy? I have a simple working philosophy with that. If I know that I'm going to use a piece of gear all the time, and if I've kind of gone through the gut check of, do I think I'll use it all the time because it's really cool and I want to get my hands on it, or will I really use it all the time, right? If I'm going to use it all the time, and especially if I'm going to make money from it, by all means, I'm going to buy it. Because obviously the bought one is probably going to work a little better. More importantly, it's going to work a little bit easier, and it'll definitely be more durable in the long run. But if it's something where I want to be able to try it, maybe do a couple shots with it, or maybe, I would only use this trick once or twice a year, even 3 or 4 times a year, then I'm probably going to DIY it. So understand that, with aluminum foil, you could take a sheet of aluminum foil, kind of like that, right? And let's say we've got like, a Godox 8200 or a Speedlight, okay? We can go ahead and we can wrap this around the Speedlight, and we can create a snoot to shape, whoops, where's my camera? There, to shape the light. Now, you may be thinking, well, gee, Joe, that's great, but I want it to be, a rounder shape. So all I'm going to do, in this case, I use a piece of gaffer's tape. You could use duct tape if you want, or electrical tape, whichever. I just need to, in fact, you could use Scotch tape for what I'm about to show you. I'm going to, you notice, like I just hit it. It doesn't, if you mess it up, you just reshape it, right? I'm going to put a little piece of gaffer's tape on there to hold it in place so it won't come off, okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to grab a water bottle, and I can make a circle. If I want a smaller circle, then I'm going to grab a smaller round object, and I'm going to be able to shape that down. I can make this longer. I can make it shorter. I can do all kinds of stuff with it. If I take a little more material, I can cover one of my white foam boards and make a reflector that's going to give me kind of a shaped modeled light. I can put this in, lots of it, on a background and get really, really awesome bokeh by throwing a background light at it. In the description below the video, I have a link to my YouTube playlist of DIY videos, and you'll see several that have aluminum foil ideas in them. Now, if you want to also, I know some of you may be thinking, well, you know what? That idea of using the aluminum foil like for a snoot is not bad, but I'd rather have something that's dark and isn't going to reflect as much light. That's where you get this stuff. It's called cinefoil, right? In fact, here, I'll switch over. It's made by a company called Roscoe. This is black aluminum foil, and whoops, there we go. It's thicker and a little bit more durable than silver aluminum foil. It's also more expensive. In fact, that price, you notice, B&H has it back ordered. You can find it on Amazon. The link below the video is an Amazon link. Newer prices, it's about $40 to $45, depending on where you buy it. And I'm pretty sure when B&H gets it back, it'll be the same. But you can also get this Roscoe foil in 24 inch by 25 foot rolls, 36 inch by 25 foot rolls, or 48 inches, 4 feet by 25 foot rolls. Okay, stuff is super durable. I actually have a piece of it that's up here that keeps my key light from hitting the wall in the background. And you can cut this stuff with scissors, right? So it cuts super easy. It's very easy to work with. So basic aluminum foil, super handy. Also in a pinch when you're on a set, if you need to wrap stuff up or store it, whatever, just to be able to have some aluminum foil, wrap it, and it's going to be easy to spot because it's bright and shiny. It's one of those kind of on-set, in the camera bag things for every photographer. Super useful, super helpful, but again, works great for taking out frizz in hair. Just understand that on a humid day, it will also take out the body, the shape of the hair. So that's the one time you don't want to use aluminum foil, right? You're only going to use aluminum foil when you don't have a lot of humidity. You're not worried about the shape of the hair, but it will knock the static right out of the hair. Works really well. Okay? All right, so that being said, now let me just go back through here. I know we had a whole bunch of comments. I don't know that there were any questions, but let's just see. Let's see. Rodrigo saying, so SOC could just be good luck. Yeah, I mean, look, SOC could just be absolutely good luck. But here's the thing, Rodrigo. I've honestly never seen an image that doesn't have additional potential that was SOC ever, right? And part of the reason is by understanding how is that image being created, right? So if it's a JPEG right out of camera, we know that it's a very basic software process, and it's not adding any additional saturation into the colors. So the colors are going to be somewhat muted compared to what I saw in real life, etc. So there's all kinds of reasons why that image is losing its potential. That doesn't make it not a great image. It makes it a potentially great image that has not met its potential, right? That's the key. Nick, these are the same people that only shoot natural light because flash is not natural. Maybe. There are people, look, straight up, and again, I'm not trying to bully anybody, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. There are people who the SOC, or I prefer natural light, is an excuse for laziness, a big excuse for laziness, meaning they just don't understand. I mean, the irony of the natural light argument, and again, you see this a lot online, so if you've never run into this before, good for you. Keep it that way. Like, I'm really serious, right? You also run into it in camera clubs, amazingly. But the whole natural light thing, here's the irony about the difference between natural light and strobes. Strobes, please understand this, gang. This is not an opinion. This is really a fact. Strobes are so much easier than natural light. And just to really clarify this, strobes in a studio setting or an indoor setting, so much easier to work with than natural light. Very simple reason. When I walk into a studio, as far as the lighting is concerned, I'm God. I put the light where I want it, when I want it, how tall, how low, how broad, how bright. I do it all. And it does exactly what I want when I want it to. That's a pretty good deal. Natural light, on the other hand, I have little to no control over. I can try to modify it a little bit, but I can't tell the sun, my shot would be so much better if you go over there. I have to come back at another time. That's not very convenient. And even then, am I going to have to deal with people, with the weather change? There's all these variables that I can't control. And that's why it's actually, some call it an art form, some call it a talent. I call it a skill because you can develop it. But it's a skill to be able to go outdoors and find great lighting, especially if you're just doing it on the fly. I mean, we have the luxury today that we can do a lot of good shoot prep shooting outdoors. And we can use apps that are going to tell us exactly where the sun will be at a given time of the day, at a specific time of the year, et cetera, et cetera. So we can actually do a lot of planning. And then we have apps like, Google Street View, where we can even see what something looks like before we get there, right? But the fact of the matter is, for those people that use that natural light argument, it really is unfortunate because natural light's so much harder. But there's a learning curve involved, so that tends to be why they, do that, okay? Brandon mentions the R5 did that. It stabilized my shaky hands and focuses where my half-blind eyes can't. Believe me, Brandon, my eyes at this point, if I had to rely on manual focus, I'm not sure that I would still be doing photography professionally because my eyes are not what they used to be. Good autofocus is extremely important to me because I do rely on it, very, very much. Jeremy, a discussion on pricing. So I'll tell you what, Jeremy, I'll do a pricing thing, but here's what I need from you. And the only reason I'm doing this is not to make you jump through hoops. I want to be clear. I've done pricing discussions before, and what happens is everybody's like, yeah, let's talk about business, let's talk about pricing, let's talk about marketing, talk about social media. And then when the time comes, nobody wants to participate and talk about what struggles they are having. I can talk about pricing at a 50,000 foot level, and that's not really going to help you because honestly, you could find that online in 5 seconds. Okay. So what is more helpful, which we don't have time for tonight, but I'll gladly do this next week. And you can message me online or send me an email through my website. I need to know a little bit more about what you're doing. Like, are you a portrait photographer? Are you a wedding photographer? Are you just getting started? Are you doing it part-time, full-time? What's your current pricing structure? What are you shooting? What do I get for the prices that you're shooting? All that kind of stuff. Give me that information and I can help you. If you haven't actually gotten to the point where you've actually set your prices yet, cool. Tell me you haven't done that, but let me know what your plan is. What do you want to shoot? How much do you want to shoot? Is it going to be part-time? Is it going to be full-time? Give me that background, and then I can help you out with pricing. I will tell you, regardless, if you are serious about making money with your camera, I would strongly encourage you to consider joining PPA. If you join my Tide Knowledge community, you can even just do the 7-day free trial. You'll get access to what I'm about to mention. There's a discount page in there, and there's a discount for the first month with PPA that will save you money. But PPA has excellent pricing tools, pricing calculators, not to mention the equipment insurance alone that you get with PPA more than covers the cost of the insurance every year. So it's kind of like a no-brainer. But I'll gladly do a free discussion, with Last Frame on pricing and all that kind of stuff. But you got to be willing to give me a little bit more information detail. So send me a message with as much information as possible. If you've got a website, I need the link, all that kind of stuff. And then I will be able to help you out. Okay. Let's see. TC, now that you mention it, can you explain how you process with the settings like highlight, shadows, black? I do different every time. I'd just like to hear how you do it. Yes and no, TC. Not tonight. I'm sorry, we don't have enough time because that's not just a short answer a question thing. I do have a presentation that I do twice a year. There will be one coming up in the fall. So if you haven't signed up for my newsletter yet, visit my website, joeedelman.com. Make sure you sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get notified when all the new classes are added. But I have a program on post-processing and the powers of raw files. I use Adobe ACR for the program, but everything I teach in the program can be used on any processing software, even GIMP, the free stuff. And we get into it in a lot of detail, and I share my workflow and how I do it, okay? And that's a 2-hour program. So, unfortunately, it's not something that I can squeeze it all into an hour here. I'd love to know, TC, maybe for next week, why you only shoot JPEG. Are there reasons to shoot only JPEG sometimes? Absolutely. But at the same time, there's a lot of reasons to not only shoot JPEG. So I'd love to know a little bit more about that, and I can certainly, help you out. Okay. And let's see here. Joe, what I find enormously triggering is the people who process the raw as a JPEG, then delete the raw as if they never ever will improve in the future. Yeah, I mean, that unfortunately, that's a person that is not interested in quality, right? And that's a statement I can say with, I'm not bullying, I'm not being a jerk. They have not put enough effort into learning what does it take to get the best quality out of your image. And that's the entire point behind the quote that I shared online. By the way, the article is linked in the description below the video. It's the article about fix it in post or get it right in camera. That's where that quote comes from, right? So if you read that article, you can see the quote, you can see the context. It's not a bullying quote. It's not a judgmental quote. It's really a statement of fact, because the bottom line, which cannot be debated, your cameras are designed to deliver maximum quality with raw files, which requires that you develop them or process them, period. How much processing? Who does the processing? That's not the question. That's not the conversation, right? The conversation is it needs to be done. It's part of the process, just like in film. Okay? All right, gang. So I thank you for listening. I thank you all for also being respectful tonight. I wasn't sure what I was going to get after all those comments, but we are out of time. I'm over time, as always. Thanks for watching. I hope that you found some value in what I shared with you tonight. Remember, hitting a thumbs up helps other people find out about the show. It's greatly appreciated. And remember, seriously, you don't get back the days that you waste. So go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. Do the work, gang. Adios.